Afternoon, good morning to everyone, based upon where you're located. I'm Stuart Blumenthal. I'd like to welcome everyone to our continuous training on Acumatica. And today we're going to be going over two things. One is filters, and the other one file storage. Everyone's been asking for these couple topics, and since they only take about 15 minutes each, we thought we would combine them into one training session called filtering and files. So a little bit unusual, but thought we would have a little bit of fun with that today. So as I said, I'm Stuart Blumenthal, and I'm going to turn this over to Jason Schwartz, who's going to be doing the presentation today. So thank you everyone for joining us. Jason, all yours.
Thanks, Stuart. Alrighty, everyone. So today, like Stuart said, we're going to go over those filters. And as always, during our presentations, it's roughly 30 minutes. Everyone's going to be muted. But if you have any questions, don't hesitate. Stuart loves pointing out those questions in the question box that you'll see on the sidebar. So feel free to type them at any point in this conversation or this presentation, and we'll definitely attend to those as they're sent. So for filters in general, Acumatica has 4 filters. We have simple filters, quick filters, advanced filters, and ad hoc filters. The top 3 you're probably very accustomed to in your day-to-day, going through bills and adjustments and your checks and payment screens. The ad hoc is something that's a report designer filter that's really overlooked when running reports, and we oftentimes get emails saying, hey, can I filter or sort this form or report? Can you modify this for me? And a lot of times you don't need to modify it. Acumatica has some tools in place to make it so they're easy to kind of redo over and over again, and we'll touch on that when we get to that part of the training. So just so you see at the top, just to point out, these are some more of the advanced filters where you have those tabs you may have seen. If we have loaded some of those demo dashboards that came with some demo generic inquiries, those often have different filters at the top. Another filter that is often overlooked, and we're going to be touching this on in the demo section, but when you're searching by vendors, you could add filters anytime you see, and I'm not sure, I believe everyone sees my mouse here, this little funnel. Anytime you see the funnel, you can save and share filters within the organization. So when you're going in through vendors or different screens with magnifying glasses, you can quickly switch between each one. And the other thing that's often not known is you can set default ones. So you don't always have to have it default to all records. You could have it default if you, in this case, was filtering by the USA for the countries. You could default to a different one, which is really nice as well. And then ad hoc filters, this is the one I was talking about with those reports, and it's under the second tab. You generally are always, when you're going into a report, if you're not just quickly jumping to it through maybe a bills and adjustment screen or checks and payment screen, but you can see there's an additional sort and filters here. And we'll be touching on this because you can be using these filters in here to adjust the reports that you're accustomed to, and even save those as a template for yourself or other people within the organization. And then finally, for this training, we are going to be handling like files and storage and attachments and kind of how to manage them, best practices, and ways that you can, if you are doing import scenarios that we've covered or done trainings on our YouTube, you will be covering how to manage those effectively, so this way things don't get kind of jumbled up and you get confused what's the file you're using. And another place you can see bills and adjustments here, just attaching, dragging, and dropping files. Alrighty, so we're going to hop into the live section here, and I have a Acumatica instance up. And for the first part of the filters here, we're going to be touching the simple filters. So for this screen here, and if anyone has a custom screen they want to kind of touch on, that's a great place to put in the questions. I love to make these interactive, so feel free if you want to kind of guide me and make this a little bit more tailored towards your needs. So on this screen here, the simple filters that everyone's accustomed to are these tabs or the columns. So in Acumatica, you can click any of these columns. You can then choose how you want to filter these columns by, select, including, and you can even remove them. They're simple / quick filters, and you can even drag these around. Now for quick filters, kind of, you can drag them up onto this upper bar. So if it's something that you often filter by and you have various columns that you often at times have to scroll to the right, what you can easily do is just drag that column. So I'm going to take the currency here. You can move it over to the top bar over here and it will stick. And this way, if currency, if you were zoomed in or it was far to the right, you can then quickly just attach or click and then adjust here to what you want to kind of filter by. And the great part of it, Acumatica, is it doesn't require you to really memorize anything. You can just kind of search through the magnifying glass window here. I'm going to sort by Great British Pound, and you can get your results from here. And then when you don't want them, you can clear them. And you can see that when you modify these results, just like we did earlier, it actually does show up on those columns, the column headers. So if you're a little confused or you just want to kind of see what's in effect, you can even clear them over here. Now the next part that we covered, which was the advanced filters, that's these little tabs over here. Advanced filters are really, really useful because you can do various filtering settings and have it all in just one click. So to set those up, you can see here that once you click on one of the tabs, we have the filter settings button is already highlighted, and that's just to kind of show if maybe you kind of glance over the tab up here that there are filters enabled. But to set those up, you just hit the filter button here. Then it's going to prompt you with like, what are your filter settings? And you can go ahead and hit the plus or just double click on the row. And then from here, we have a couple different things we need to answer. The first one is the property. Property is strictly referring to the column header and what the data you're going to want to filter through. So, and the other thing I will point out is oftentimes you may forget the name or you kind of just want to double check. The annoying thing about this is that you have to cancel out of this to then scroll over. So what I often do is just duplicate the page. And then if you have another screen, you can drag it over and work on it in the first tab that you set up. And the great part, like you've seen in everything in Acumatica, you can have multiple people accessing the same screen. The system does not freak out. It encourages it. And if there is anything that is being like for adjustments, maybe someone's making a change of bills, there are lockouts in place. So don't worry. They already have thought about that. So we're going to go and hit this filter button here. We're going to change the property. We're going to select one. And in this case, which is a cool one, maybe you want to do like, when was it last posted? And then right here, you can see that Acumatica will allow us to select our condition. So for a post period, I'm going to choose between because I want to choose maybe between Q3 or Q4 or whenever that was posted. So I'm going to choose is between. So we have an is between here. And then the value, you can select, you could do post period or you could do quarters, obviously, but we'll do just do months. So we'll do between September of 2013 and we will do our next one. And another thing I wanted to point out is instead of switching over between these buttons here, you can actually use your arrow keys. So when you get to the bottom and you hit down again, you'll see it automatically switches you to the next page. So that's another thing that I like to use when I'm going through multiple pages because it is a little annoying sometimes to keep flipping and kind of keeping an eye on it. So I'm just going to choose May 2014 for this example. And then I'm going to hit apply. Now, once I hit apply here, notice that we didn't change to a new tab. We stayed on the existing tab, but our filters did apply. Now, if we wanted to save this filter as one of these column headers here, or tabs, what we're going to need to do is go one step further and hit the save button. Save is just going to ask us our name, and I'm just going to do between period, and then I'll just do like 03, just because it's an example. We're going to hit OK here. And then after that, what we're going to need to make sure we do if we want to share it with everyone in our organization is we click this button right here, shared. If this isn't selected and you save it, that means that only your user will have access to those fields. So for things that you're creating for yourself, just don't share them. Things that you want to share within the organization, we can make sure that's clicked. Now the default button next to it, that's what I was talking about with automatically going to that singular tab or that specific filter. So if you have a ton of filters and you don't necessarily always want to see the all records, you can set this default so when you click on this bills and adjustments page, it will jump to that individual filter tab. So that's really helpful as well, especially if maybe you only want to see bills that you were assigned to, or maybe bills that you created and that you're responsible for. So maybe all records isn't the best for that, and that's where you can use these default filter tabs for. So we're going to hit apply. Now, it's always good to kind of click out, and I just do this just to double check, kind of click out to go to a different screen, and then when that starts loading, go back to that original screen. And you can even use, like we've shown before, the 2020 R2 has this recents tab, or recents button here, and it will show you basically all the previous actions you've done within the system. But we're going to go back to our filter, and we're going to make sure that that shared button was checked. And as you can see here, it wasn't. So we're going to go back, hit save, apply. We're going to go back to all records here. Just double check again, because sometimes things don't always stick the first time. Go back to filters, and we're going to switch over to our between period here. We're going to share that again. I think I might have been on the wrong one. I had to have that selected. Hit apply. Go back. Switch right back. And then you can see here it's been checked. So you can see that it sometimes doesn't always stick the first time, or you may click incorrectly. Just good ways to double check that. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is these values here. Depending on the property you choose for your filters, these values may change because they're internal system IDs. Don't really question it. It's not something to be concerned about. Just double click on it, hit the magnifying glass. The system will then show the new value or what it currently is selected as, so you can understand it a little bit easier. So these are advanced filters within Acumatica. You can use those in other screens, some overlooked ones, like for example in vendors here. I think I actually created one in customers for everyone. You can look at that. I know it was vendors. And then we can go to the plus button here, or click on one of our vendors, hit the magnifying glass, and you can see here we have another space to put filters. In the filter settings here, we can select the USA if we want to, or we can even create a new one. And I'm going to do that for an example. So the new button here on this screen is if you're in maybe one of these filters and you want to create a new filter. So just hit the new, and it bumps you right back to all records. If you wanted to remove that filter or copy it, you can use your copy button here or the remove button here. So I'm going to do new. I'm going to choose my property, and maybe for this one, I want to only show a specific vendor class. So we're going to go in and choose our vendor class for the property. We're going to make sure it contains that, and we're going to do product. And then oftentimes, if it's something you didn't want to see, you can just choose does not equal, and then choose the one that you don't want to see. And then this way, Acumatica will filter out all those vendor classes. So I'm going to go and hit you notice how I can't hit the shared yet. You have to save. So we're going to hit save here. I'm going to do product vendor class. I'm going to hit, and then you can see I can then hit just shared button. I'm going to save again. You can save as many times as you want. And then we're going to hit apply. And then you can see here we have our product vendor class, and then this will be shown for anyone searching through vendors in the system. And it can be a little tedious in the beginning, but definitely it's worth it, the extra time to create all these different tabs, because it can really kind of create the workflow through the system a lot easier. And especially if you have multiple branches or companies within the system, and some of them you just don't want to show for certain companies. Unfortunately, you can't create a filter per company, but you could have the tab available and just select and just name them after each company or branch in the system, and this way people would just click on those. So that's another thing. So is there any questions that came up about these filters before we hop into the ad hoc for the last section of filters?
The only thing that came up, Jason, was that underneath the lookups, like not the lookup, sorry, back to the main list. It was asked about the adding columns to there. So can you customize this further So if there's fields that are, if there are columns that are missing under here, can you add additional columns?
So for adding additional columns, I'm assuming you're referring to like some of these columns here that are hidden or ones that are not even on here. You would actually have to edit the generic inquiry. We actually do have a video already on our YouTube channel that it goes into adding simple additional fields within that are on that table. We could definitely link that afterwards. Just a quick way to go through it, because we may have an extra time because we're going a little quicker. What you would do here is first go into customization, edit generic inquiry like I did. And I know I went a little fast, so I'll go back real quick. Customization here. And in order to do this, you may need a customization role, may need to have admin rights depending on how your system is set up. So you're going to hit edit generic inquiry. And then while this is loading, have another tab open, search for the field you like to add. And so you just have to just navigate specifically to it. So I'll just give my system. This is running locally, so it may take an extra second or two. Once you've identified the field you want to add, you're going to inspect it. And to inspect the element here, you're just going to go to Customization, Inspect Element, which is also Control, Alt, and clicking. So maybe I want to show like a description of the header information here. You're going to inspect. And the two things that you need to know to take away from this to be able to add simple additional columns is the data field and the data class. So the data class is the table. The data field is the column. Now, when you're modifying that generic inquiry, on the first tab, it's going to have all of the tables that's included. For this easy edit, is if your data class here, which is AP invoice, is already on your GI, then you're good to go. All you need to do then is head to your results grid, hit the plus button, go back to the original tab, add the data field, which will be doc date here. So you can go down to here. So we're going to have to choose our AP invoice because that's the date, the table, and you're just going to search for doc date, and then that will be added right there. So that's a really easy way. If you want to see further with like linking, please head over to that YouTube video. We do spend a lot more time on that, but that's how you can easily add those columns to then filter.
And then the second question that came up, Jason, was that can we filter with more than one scenario?
Yes. So are we referring to like having multiple filter, I guess, multiple filter columns, so like multiple properties here? And if so, that is yes, you can. So you could do, if I want to add on to like my bill period, I want to also filter my bill period maybe by vendor here. I can go down to vendor. I'm going to add this travel agency here. I'm going to hit save, and then I'm going to hit apply. And then you can see that that didn't show up there because it didn't meet the requirements. Obviously, if we hit uncheck this one, it will show up. They only have one transaction. Maybe that's not a good example. We can kind of go back here, but that is possible. You can have as many as you like.
And then the other thing you can do is that you could also go into the column heading, say the vendor name is equal to X, as well as maybe then doing a date range or something like that too within those areas.
Right.
If that does not answer your question, please let us know. Or if we answered your question, if you could let us know. Meanwhile, Jason wanted to continue on.
Perfect. So the next filter is the ad hoc filter. Those are going to happen on report designer reports, not ARM reports. Acumatica does have two types of reports, report designer, which is using a report designer application, and then the ARM is using report definitions. So these types of reports like the AP aging, those are often set up as a report designer report. And anytime you click on the report and you see it has additional sort and filters, this is where we can add that information. So from here, best practices is to just run the report as is, see what see the data that you have available, and then after that, you're going to then duplicate it. So from here, you're going to find the field that you want to filter by, or you want to sort by, whatever you choose. Here, we're just going to filter, and I want to filter for this example by using, we'll do a due date of 10/30/2020. So we're going to go head over here, We're going to go to our additional sort filters, and then we're going to head over to the property. So the property is referring specifically to these headers right here. So there's two things. Most filters will be included on there. Headers would be included. It's not always the case, and that may need an additional going in a little step further to edit in the report designer. But the first thing to do is always check to see the header you want to change. So we're going to head over, in this case, to define the due date. We're going to scroll down here and just type in due date. So just type DUE. And the reason I wanted to type that before I selected it is because there may be multiple selections here. Could be multiple ways to modify it. And sometimes it can be a little confusing. Most times it can be singular, a singular result. If it is and it's not working, try both. If not, you can always reach out to us. We have due date here. We're going to then choose our date. So I wanted to choose 9/30/2020 or 9/30/2020. We type in our value here, what we want to filter by. And before we go ahead and run this report, if this is something that we wanted to consistently do, and maybe due date's not the best example, but maybe a vendor or maybe like a branch, you can go ahead and save this template up here. So go ahead and hit save template, and then we'll just type it as due date. And then once we save it, if we want to have it available for other people within the organization, we can go ahead and hit shared, save again, just hit OK. It'll just overwrite it. And then now this will be available for everyone going through on this report. If you want everyone that's accessing this report to always start with the due date, you would hit default and save, and then this way it would jump to that template. If not, you just have to select it from the dropdown, and you can have as many as you like. So we're going to go ahead and hit run report. And it may take a little bit longer now because we're filtering through results and the system has to look over it. And I believe I may have done a wrong filter here. And sometimes you have to play around. Oh, that was the doc date. My apologies. The due date.
And Jason, one of the questions that came in was, and if I want to filter, for example, certain invoices from a single vendor, but not use between. So I think we can definitely, I will take that. I think that for the person who's asking this question, we can the answer is yes. We'll be happy to spend a little time with you one-on-one if needed.
Yeah, I mean, all you have to do here, just choose your vendor. So you scroll down, look for vendor here, vendor name, vendor, select your vendor in the list, and then see here, or just choose one really quickly, hit apply. Make sure that's obviously set to equals, and then it shows up right here. So yeah, you can filter by if you can filter it by the top columns, you can filter it by the tabs. But going back to the aging, you can see here, once I switched over to the correct due date, we got our two results here, and that's the only pages that are showing up compared to our original report, which had had 6 pages. So now that we have that set up, we're going to head over to the next segment of this course, which is this training, which is the files. So oftentimes when you're attaching files, either in bills or you're attaching files for like import scenarios, export scenarios, it can get a little tedious or frustrating, kind of determining if you're using that file for something else, kind of what is what. And maybe you don't want to include, maybe you uploaded something, you want to delete it, and oftentimes you'll hit remove link and you get this error, you can't delete the last link, and it's just really a nuance to the system. There is a really easy way to avoid that. Either going into edit, or and then from the edit field here, you can hit the trash can. And once you hit the trash can, that will actually remove the document from that attachment. And then the other way is you would have to just bring an additional file, and then it'll let you remove the last one there. So that's the first way. That's the 2 ways. The other thing I wanted to point out was this file maintenance screen within the system. So the file maintenance screen in this system is, you can see here, let's just go to a document with an attachment. This one has one, perfect. The file maintenance screen is useful for a couple of reasons. Is one, it's going to give you the history of that file. So if you had an import scenario or an export scenario and there's very different versions coming in the system, from right here you can go in and upload new versions or see all the version history. The other thing you can do is, say you uploaded a file and then you wanted to get the older version because something happened, you can go in and edit into this file maintenance screen. All the different various versions will be in here. You can just select, hit view selected version, and then that system will prompt you to download it. So that's another really nice tool. Going through this screen here, this stuff really isn't important. The synchronization is if you're looking to maybe set up an automation synchronization within the system to have that file always, constantly syncing back and forth, but that's how you'll do it here. And then the other part that we kind of looked in on the original slideshow of the webinar was search and files. Search and files will essentially look through all of the different files in the system, anything attached here, and you can access it and see where it's been located. So maybe you had a attachment that you brought into the system, you can't find it. You could just go ahead and search that name, and then from there, when you click on it, it'll bring up this pop-up. And the other original way was just a shortcut. You can then see where this was stored within the system. So it's a stock. This one's stored as a stock item under Lego, and that's the picture. And then these buttons up here, checkout. Maybe if you wanted to check the file out, I don't really see a lot of use in that, but maybe if you wanted to upload a new file version or get the latest version, which is download it, that's how you'll do that. But yeah. Is there any questions?
I don't see any. I don't see any questions. Actually, one did come in. Is that they asked if the file attachments utilized their file storage within Acumatica.
The file attachment does use this is only file storage within the system of your Acumatica ERP.
Okay, so if you have 100 gigs of space, make sure that you keep your file sizes small, and there are ways to show you how much if you go into the tenants there, and Jason, I don't think you need to show it, but if you go into the tenants, you can actually see your disk space usage for snapshots and different parts of the system, and you can actually see how much space your file attachments are using. Just again, use smaller file sizes. That's probably one of the biggest hints we always recommend to everyone.
Exactly, and then if you have any old snapshots in the system that have a lot of files, you can make backups of those snapshots without files when you're creating the snapshot too. That helps.
It's probably one of the best things to do. Yeah, if you're making snapshots, don't back up the file attachments unless you need them for that. Especially if you're making a demo or a test tenant for you to do things. So great points there. So thank you very much, Jason, on that. If you want to go back to the PowerPoint, yep. We can then just finish off the end there. So perfect. I think everyone asked their questions. And so in the end, we want to thank everyone for joining. Then we always try to do these at least once a month. For some contact numbers here, you can see myself and Jason. Also, from an account manager, always feel free to reach out to Pat Russo, who's the Acumatica account manager here at NetAWork. Down below, you'll see some websites. If you always want to follow us on our blogs, you can do that. Our YouTube videos, which have been we got a lot out there, and we're continuing to add to that. If there's any trainings that you want, as you saw, these are free of charge today. If there's any trainings that you want, please feel free to recommend them to us. We'll love to put those together. Usually if it's 30 to 45 minutes, we'll gladly do them. If they're short periods like this, where it's like maybe a 15 minutes, we'll join them together. So appreciate everyone's feedback throughout the process. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for today. Jason, great job of putting this together. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Catch you in the next one.
Have a great day.